There is an overwhelming amount of possibilities when building out units in the Unicorn Overlord, from which classes to use and what combinations, to the best items to equip each class with, to what role we want each unit to actually have on the battlefield. So to try and make this a bit more manageable, I want to share 3 of my mid to late game builds that have been unstoppable in almost every situation I've gotten them into. Let's start off with Alain's unit. Alain is flanked by cavalry and backed up by an elven archer and a breaker. This unit has, especially in the late game, been an absolute beast, plowing straight through maps to the objectives, but how exactly? Well, let's take a look at that. Now, you'll see that we're at max level here, but even at mid-game, this is still a great build, and we'll talk about that in a minute. First off though, Alain leads the unit, and his role is really just as a tank to protect his allies and to get in occasional hits. Once he unlocks Spinning Blade, he becomes much more effective offensively, but his ability to tank damage with Noble Guard, which buffs his defense, and then tank for his allies with Luminous Guard, really helps keep the unit alive. At level 25, Alain gets Rapid Order, which will give all his allies plus 20 initiative, allowing the unit to wipe enemies before they even attack in some cases. Next in the group is Clive. As a knight or a great knight, Clive is an excellent attacker, able to attack multiple enemies multiple times. Wild Rush will hit full columns, which can help take out pesky casters and healers in the back row, while Pile Thrust and Assaulting Lance can refund action points if their target is defeated. These skills can lead to infinite loops of attacks that can wipe a whole unit if they've taken some damage already. Clive's Knight's Pursuit will also attack a column of enemies as a follow-up attack. His Cavalier Call gives his cavalry allies bonus attack power, and Quick Guard can help cover allies and keep damage spread around, making it hard for enemies to focus down one of your characters. However, I've also given Clive the General's Pike, which grants a further 20% attack and 40% crit rate to his cavalry allies as well. So while Clive does a fair share of damage himself, he also buffs the other cavalry characters to provide massive damage potential to them too. Finally, Clive is also equipped with the Angel Hunter's Buckler, which gives him aerial guard to protect him from cavalry's weakness, flying enemies. This skill gives a heavy guard and 1 passive point when attacked by flying enemies. So even flying units can have a hard time taking Alain's unit down. I'll also note real quick that, in this case at least, all Clive's power is coming from his abilities, so I've equipped him with Carnelian and Lapis Pendants to maximize his action and passive points. Next in the unit is the healer and magic defender, Miriam. As a Sainted Knight or Radiant Knight before promotion, Miriam was here mainly to protect against magic users at first, but I later realized just how powerful her heals were as well. She has a couple of attacks that aren't that great, though when buffed by Clive they can be pretty strong. The main point of these attacks though is to restore passive points so she can continuously use her magic negating skills. Then she has the row heal active skill as well, which is awesome at keeping your front row alive. On the passive side, she has row barrier and magic barrier, both of which negates magic damage and afflictions. These 2 skills really take the fight out of mage units, making them easy targets for this unit. Then in the back row we have Morden and Ridiel. Morden is here to be the armor smasher. Cavalry units can have difficulty taking out larger armored classes like Hoplites, Legionnaires, or Werebears, so Morden is here to solve that issue, and solve it he does. Heavy Smash is great early on for armored foes, and Assaulting Blow can create an infinite loop like Clive's Assaulting Lance, but at level 30, breakers like Morden get Row Smash. This does just as the name suggests, doing massive damage to rows of armored enemies. In addition to this attack though, with his lower initiative, Morden can usually get enraged to go off once or twice first, boosting his attack and accuracy. This massively increases his attack power, and quite often can just wipe the whole front row of armored enemies. Once this is done, and your cavalry's turns come around again, they can easily mop up the rest of the enemies. I'll also note that I gave Morden some blue spectacles to raise his accuracy as well, since that is his main downside. So now we come to the final piece of this puzzle, Ridiel. She is mainly here as a flying enemy counter, and another armor breaker as well. Since her attacks deal magic damage, she can often help mop up any armored units that Morden left, and she can help take down flyers in the back row. Her magic conferral skill can also help our cavalry units break through armor as well. She is probably the least vital to this group, but she also has a lot of debuff negation in her passive abilities, which makes it really hard for enemies to debuff our whole unit consistently, even with shamans or druids throwing out curses every turn. This debuff protection rounds out the unit really well. So that's the late game version, but what about a mid game version with only 4 characters? In that situation, just take Ridiel out and leave the rest in. You might have a little more trouble with flying units and units with debuffers like shamans or druids, but in most cases this unit should still dominate most foes easily. The next OP unit here is Monica's unit. This one actually surprised me on how effective it was, sometimes being the unit that could handle fights Alain's unit couldn't. I think this is in large part due to the absolutely devastating power of a shaman or druid's debuffs, but also effective synergy with them. You see, Sylvie is a druid, and her defensive curse inflicts Guard Seal on a row of enemies, and Guard Seal counts as an affliction. Then both Gloucester and Berengaria have skills that do more damage against afflicted enemies, and they both hit a whole row as well. So what you have is a ridiculous damage multiplier. So digging into the unit itself, first we have Gloucester the Doom Knight. As mentioned, his main function is to get Dark Flame off, dealing damage and inflicting burn to the debuffed enemies. This attack can, because of the burn, be effective versus armored targets as well as any other targets. Gloucester's passives can grant him extra points with Demonic Pact and give him back health with Sanguine Arts. Vengeance too can be a nice boost, but unfortunately it rarely goes off with this setup, but it really isn't needed. I also have Gloucester equipped with the Angel Hunter's Buckler to give him protection against flying enemies like I did with Clive. Next is Monica. She is here for the exact same reason that Miriam is in Alain's unit, to protect against magic attacks and provide healing. I know that Doom Knights like Gloucester really don't like healing, but he just has to deal with it because I don't want to use all my revive orbs on him. Then there is Berengaria. She is an absolute beast, and when her attacks can be buffed by enemies' afflictions, she can do major damage to groups of enemies. Her Death Spin is the main attack in this setup, and I've even kept it above the higher level Vicious Torment since it can hit whole rows instead of just one enemy. She also lowers enemy attack and initiative with the Eye of the Warrior Princess at the beginning of combat, which cannot be overstated how powerful that is. Then she can heal herself with Sanguine Pursuit, and with this unit, she'll probably get a passive point back as the enemy she hits is probably afflicted as well. Finally, she's quite tanky herself, so even if an enemy gets through your front line, they're not going to wipe the unit since Berengaria at least will probably still be standing. Next we come to the linchpin of this whole unit, Sylvie. Without her, this unit just does not perform anywhere near the same level. As a druid, she can get debuffs off quickly with her high initiative, greatly weakening the enemy unit in the process. As we discussed earlier though, her main move will be Defensive Curse to inflict Guard Seal and thereby buff the damage of Gloucester and Berengaria. In addition to this though, she also uses Hastened Curse thanks to the Speed Hex staff I have her equipped with, which will reduce one enemy's initiative by 30, and then Cursed Swamp will activate at the beginning of a battle, reducing all enemies' initiative by 10 and their evasion by 30, and this will also reduce cavalry enemies' passive points by 1 as well. All of these initiative debuffs, along with Berengaria's, can ensure that all of your characters get to go before at least the front row of enemies do. Beyond all this though, Sylvia will also reduce the damage the enemy can do with her other skills like Quick Curse and Offensive Curse. I've made sure to equip her with a Dove Plume to make sure she goes as early as possible, as it is crucial she goes first to get the Defensive Curse off before Berengaria and Gloucester's turns come around, and I've also given her a Lapis and Carnelian Pendant to keep her cursing the whole time. Finally, I rounded out this unit with Ramona. Now, Ramona seems to die by the end of a lot of battles due to her being a flying character and the fact that I'll still send her unit after archers, but she does get off some nice healing and her passive skills are really good for providing support. Circle Barrier will reduce incoming enemy damage, while Quick Dispel removes buffs from enemies that can prevent Sylvie's debuffs, and Restore refunds Sylvie's passive point that she uses right at the start of the battle. Ramona can also grant True Strike at night with Night Vision and use Aurora Veil to provide additional magic protection. So while she can be quite effective at buffing allies, it's not best to send the unit after archers, as they always quickly take her out. She is the least important member of this team, and if you're running a 4-man team, you can leave her out. This team should still steamroll just about anything you come across, and even hold their own against flying units depending on the situation, thanks to Sylvie's Offensive Curse. The last team I'll share is Fran's unit. I built this unit primarily as a response to cavalry-heavy units and flying units, though it can still be fairly effective against mages and even archers as well. That said, it is the weakest of these 3 units. Being led by a flyer though, this unit could get behind enemy lines and take out enemy towers or assault artillery positions. So first up in this unit is Gamel. he is here as a dodge tank. Outfitted with both a royal and silken scarf, he has a whopping 147 evasion, meaning that nearly everything misses him that isn't a true strike. His next claim to fame is the Shadow Bite skill. This skill blinds a row of enemies and reduces their initiative and evasion by 20 each. Any row hit with this skill just won't do damage to your unit generally, unless cured. This skill and his evasion are all you need to gamble for. Just put him in front and watch him dance as everything misses him. Next up is Liza. Now Liza is a bit of an outlier here. I mainly put her here because all my other tanky protectors were already assigned. She isn't the best at protecting her allies, but she does have aid cover, which can protect your flying units from 1 or 2 arrow attacks, but more than that and you'll probably lose a flyer. Also, she's dead if you fight mages with this unit. However, against flying enemies, she'll shine with her crossbow attacks. I would say Liza is the least useful in this unit, but she does allow you to take on archers that would otherwise wreck your flyers. You could replace her though with a Lex or a Hodrick for better protection. That said, either of these are going to go down against magic attacks, so be prepared for that. Next in the unit is Unifi. As an archer with some magic potential, she is here to help with taking down flying and armored enemies. Before level 30, you can set her to use Mystic Arrow on armored enemies as it does additional magic damage to them, or use Sonic Shaft on flying enemies which does additional damage based on the target's initiative. She also has Eagle Eye for a true strike which can help against flyers' high evasion or that of thieves and rogues. However, at level 30 she gets Glacial Rain, which hits all enemies and freezes them, which is great for nuking an enemy team at the end of a battle. On the rare occasion she gets hit, her triple counter is ridiculously powerful too, counterattacking 3 enemies at once. Then at level 35, Snow White Strike is a nice follow-up attack that also freezes the target. All in all, Unifi adds some great versatility to the team, allowing them to get past armored and flying foes alike. Finally, we have the 2 flyers of the team, Fran and Hilda. Now Fran is here to take out cavalry and deal area damage. Her aerial smite and high swing abilities will devastate cavalry, while her fatal dive can be effective at taking out columns of enemies. She also has wide pursuit thanks to the Outlaw's bracelet that allows her to follow up attack a row of enemies. So those units with 3 knights in the front row go down really fast once Fran's turn comes around. Then Hilda is here as another nuker. I've equipped her with the Dragoon's War Spear, which gives her Dragoon Dive that attacks all enemies and has increased potency against ground-based targets. That said, even without this weapon and skill, Hilda is still great at taking out cavalry and other units with her area attacks. In fact, one of my favorites of hers is Fire Breath, which inflicts burn, making her semi-effective against armored targets as well. Her passives are also pretty nice, with Dragon's Roar reducing enemy initiative and Deflect allowing her to negate melee damage and increase her evasion. So to make this unit work with 4 characters in mid-game, I'd say take out Liza. This unit will lose its ability to take on archers, but otherwise should still remain strong against most everything else. So as I said, this unit will excel against other flyers and cavalry units, and do decent against archers and mages, and even armored units from time to time. How well they do against archers, mages, and armored units though will be affected by RNG more than the other 2 units that we've talked about. I'm sure that swapping out just one character or equipping them slightly differently could fix some of this unit's weaknesses. However, these 3 units, and especially the first 2, carried me through the late game with no problem at all, and can just as easily help you in the mid to late game with the modifications mentioned. Now for more Unicorn Overlord, I've got this video right here for you. Please remember to like, subscribe, and all that stuff YouTube likes. Thank you so much for watching, have a great day, and keep on gaming.